Well, Phil Tippett, hello, congratulations. We've just watched Mad God, and it's fantastic. It's the apocalypse now for animation, really, isn't it? And 30 years in the making. You must have been but a young boy when you started. How did things start for you?
Well, it was, I shot about 6 minutes of it, right after we finished RoboCop 2. And I had a crew, and I started losing them to other jobs because I couldn't pay anybody. And I just realized the scope was too big. And so, I and then the digital revolution hit, and there was no way I could do anything else except, pedal faster uphill. And so that occupied my days. And then the evenings I would work over that 20-year period. The best advice I ever got from a filmmaker, my wife was in the editorial department on Amadeus, and we would have dinner with Milos Forman. And I was, asked him if he could give me any advice about filmmaking. And he gave me the best advice I ever got, which was, if you want to take a good shit, you have to eat a good meal first. And so that, it was, I just flooded myself with reading of like anything I could get my hands on. It was like, which a lot of the stuff I already have in my archives and stuff, but on architecture and Dante and Milton and Freud and Jung and all this stuff. And so I just kind of built up, I was eating well, for that 20 years. And I was archiving the 6 minutes that I'd shot about 12 years ago. And some of the guys looked over my shoulder and saw it and went, what the hell is that? Was it some old forgotten Czechoslovakian film? And it's like, no, it's this movie I've been working on. I'm just mothballing it. And they got interested and let us do a shot. Let us do a shot. So, because they were the guys that wanted to, inspired by Star Wars and RoboCop, and they wanted to work with models and motion control and lights, and they missed that, so they had to be computer graphics artists. And so they really wanted to just have a taste of what it was like to do one of those setups. So I kind of mentored them through it, and they were already accomplished filmmakers, but they really never done anything like that. And it just grew. From there, the more people got interested, I gave a talk around locally, and college students and high school students would volunteer. So I'd get, like, sometimes on Saturdays, 15 to 20 people, and I would spend the week just figuring out the processes that I would ask these people to do, and I got them to do like all the heavy lifting. Like if there was a lot of detailed work, and I had about 6 people working on this one scene that involved making mountains out of army men. And I got little plastic army men, and we melted them and put them on these plaster bandage piles, and that took about 3 years to finish all that stuff. But it was like 3 or 4 people, just working on this stuff. And God, if I had to do that, it would have never gotten done. So it was, and they were all volunteers. So,
Well, taking you back, Phil, to for people who are watching this, of course, you worked on the original Star Wars, you worked on Jurassic Park, Dragon Slayer, one of my favorites, Willow, RoboCop, as you mentioned, Starship Troopers, and so on. So this is within the practical world where you can physically hold and touch the creatures on the tabletop with the stop motion animations. And so there's quite a romantic view, isn't there, attached to the physical world of stop motion. And of course, we're speaking to you from the Ray and Diana Harryhausen Foundation, and Ray Harryhausen, is pretty much the godfather of all of that. You met him. So you've since worked in the digital world, though. You are working on all of the latest stuff, Mandalorian, all the new Star Wars, everything else. So how much was it nice for you to revisit the old techniques as it was for these young people for the first time?
And they just kind of wanted a taste of what it was like, and so that opportunity arose, to mentor some people, and I would get volunteers, and two of them turned out to be, they were, amateur stop motion guys, and they spent a couple of years working with me, and I my mentoring is like, well, here's what I'm doing. Watch, and
How does that work, Phil? Because when you were doing stop motion, you were mostly doing it in groups of 1 and 2, on original films, to supervise other people. How does that work when you're watching dailies or rushes? How do you maintain continuity for sequences? Was that difficult? Because you had quite a few animators on this.
Nah, it's not difficult. I kind of have a vision for the thing, and a lot of storyboards too, so it's very easy to communicate. And things got changed all the time because it was like, I was kind of made it up as I went along. I mean, I had an outline that was maybe 15 pages long that was just a tone, and so I didn't know what I was getting into until I got into it, and then I'd figure out what to do.
And when people think of animated feature films, they think of a family film. They certainly think of children's films as
Yeah,
well.
they do.
This is neither. As I say, it's the apocalypse now of animation.
It won't show up on the Disney Channel.
It's certainly accomplished. I mean, were you worried as you were getting further and further into it that I'm making something that's going to be restricted in terms of its viewing?
Nah, I always realized it was going to be a hard sell, and everybody that is kind of helping me get this stuff out there uh, to film festivals. It's like, yeah, it's not for everybody, but the people that are into this stuff, it's really hard to tell, because if you're looking for responses from people, that are your friends, because you keep everything like pretty close, you don't know if they're telling you the truth. And but we'd have the final check screening in a regular theater, and a bunch of people, like Dennis Muren and John Berg, called me up a couple of weeks later and just said, I can't forget this. You've damaged my brain. So yeah.
Well, it is unforgettable, isn't it? It's got wonderful sound design. I mean, I
Oh
hope I'm not
God,
giving
yeah.
anything away by saying there's no actual dialogue in the film, but there's intense sound. I was going to say beautiful sound. It's very layered and it's very immersive as well, Phil. How important was that for you?
Everything, George Lucas has always said sound's half the picture. So I was really lucky through my friend Alex Cox to meet Dan Wool, who did his music for a bunch of his films, and Dan agreed. So we think similarly about music and abstraction, and doing something different. And then we were able, through Dan, to enlist the help of Richard Beggs, who goes way back to Apocalypse Now days and whatnot. And yeah, Richard agreed to do it. And he had the best line, "Not much is happening, but there's a lot going on," was his critique.
There is a sense of tension throughout, isn't there? And when you're working on something for 30 years, to try and kind of get a sense of the pace of it, and I believe this started as a Kickstarter project, so you were obviously stopping and starting between other jobs. Did you have to get motivated to get back into that headspace?
No, it's like, when your family comes to visit, when they step through the door, it's just, you re-enter that reality. So, and I'd lived with this thing for so long, it was just like breathing air.
So when you were working on the Tauntauns for The Empire Strikes Back and the chess set for the original Star Wars, were you using a video assist at that point? Were you using video technology to play back frames?
I did. Dennis Muren found a reel-to-reel tape recorder that did single frames, and so I used that. My skill level on Empire was not where it really needed to be. But I had the time to. We had a prototype walker and a prototype tauntaun, and I just spent, you know, 10 hours a day just doing the scales and, you know, getting weight and mass and, you know, acceleration, deceleration, all working. I mean, I had done it for years, but it needed to be, you know, like that last 10%. Um, um, you know, I just was able to do that for like 8 months while everything, or 6 months while everything was getting going. And you know, and so then it was kind of like riding a bike as a kid. You know, is like you try and you get training wheels and you try and you try, and then one day miraculously, boop, you know, it's like, I did it. And then how did I do it? And so you just go back in, and yeah, but it kind of surprised me.
Now, I noticed there was a cameo, a brief cameo at the beginning and the end of the Cyclops from the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad,
Of course.
sort of lurking there in the. And you say, of course, but why would people watching this need to know that's of course? Because I mean, I know and you know, Phil, but what from people watching, why is that of course?
Well, it was only for people who know what the Cyclops was. I showed it to Guy Madden, and he was like, "Oh, there's a Cyclops in it. That's great." You know, so it's full of, like, I guess what they call these days Easter eggs, right? So there's like a bunch of these little details.
So the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad in 1958 kind of really helped kind of G you on to become an animator, didn't it?
That was it. Yeah. No, that's what did it. It was like being hit by a bolt of lightning. And yeah, I mean, everything changed. But you know, we didn't have back then access to media that's here today. I mean, we had Forey Ackerman's Famous Monsters of Filmland, and fortunately, he knew Ray. So you know, every month, you know, I would hit all the liquor stores in town looking for a famous monster, and then eventually got in contact with Forey, and he was in LA and I was in San Diego, and he would invite us up when Ray was in town, and you know, that's how I met Ray, through Forey.
You got to meet. There's a very young Phil Tippett there. Look, with
Yeah, I'm about 16.
there we go, 1961. So meeting
No,
Ray
it's not.
Harryhausen.
That's 67.
Is that 67? I'm
Yeah.
misreading my fonts there. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
making you older than your years. And of course, then you mess up again with Ray Harryhausen in the 2000s. I think it's around 2000, 2005. So, you know, people like Ray Harryhausen and their legacy, luckily because of the Harryhausen Foundation, we're looking after all of his work and models and so on. The models from Mad God, are you looking after them well? You're not reusing them for other characters or stripping down the armatures, are you? Are they?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay.
You know, but we've always done this, taxidermed them and glued them back together. So you've still got the puppet, but then you've got then you've got the armatures, which are, you know, hard to come by.
Yes. So we can't see an exhibition of the full cast, can we then, of Mad God necessarily? Because would they all be, could you collate
Well,
them all together?
I got them all in a cabinet.
So they could go on a tour with you, or possibly a sequel. What do you think of Mad God Part 2?
I've already thought about it, and I've got 3 scripts or outlines done, because I only work from outlines, and you know, just kind of build loosely from there, do outlines and then storyboards, and that allows me to like kind of figure out the shape, and then I keep changing that all the time.
Gosh, and you know, the idea of taking on another 30-year commitment, do you see it as that? Or do you,
No, you know, I won't live that long.
of course you will.
No, well, if I do, I won't do that again. No, the next thing is totally different from Mad God, but it's like they say, the canary sings one song. So everything I've done has been in this particular kind of zone, and that's just what I do. You know, it's like some kind of a signature that I don't see, but that other people see, including my style of design and animation. That's like, wow, it's like anybody else's. And it's like, no, it's not. It's different. Oh,
So your work on other films like Howard the Duck, which has recently been restored in 4K, kind of
so,
lives on. That has quite the following now as well. So I know it wasn't received well at the time, but your work is always well received in the films it appears in.
well, this is like a rule, it seems. Whatever you see when you're 12 years old sticks with you. And, even if it's a piece of crap, it's just like, it's what you like. And we have huge, not huge, but arguments about, with my guys about things like The Thing, and I like the Christian Nyby The Thing, and they like the John Carpenter Thing. And it was like, I saw The Thing when I was 12, and they saw, the remake when they were 12, and that's just how it works.
It is, isn't it? So people have those Star Wars memories, and of course, all the films they grew up with. Harry Potter, I'm sure, is the same for all of those young people as well. When you started off with Mad God, it was a Kickstarter campaign, so it's the fans that kind of funded this over the years. I mean, was that the intention at the start? Did you go to any major studios to see if you could green light it somewhere?
No, I spent part of my 12 years, or whatever, 20 years, I did a bunch of key art and did a bunch of, kind of synopses of movie ideas, and, would get summarily shot down in Hollywood. I could get into any studio I wanted to, but, I kept getting shot down. And, with John Davison tried to help me. And so I'm friends with John and Ed Newmeyer, and they told me, your work is art damaged. That's why, no studio wants it, because art movies don't make money. And so it's impossible. And it was like, okay, well, I guess if I'm going to do something, I've got to do it myself. And I'm glad it worked out that way, because what I was trying to do was fit into the Hollywood mold. And it was just a square peg in a round hole. It was never going to happen, ever.
Well, I'm reminded of Richard Williams, who I interviewed a few years ago, a good few years ago, when he was making The Cobbler and the Thief, and then The
Right.
Thief and the Cobbler. He changed it around. And lovely man. And he did lots of 2D animation. He did the title sequences for Pink Panther, and this is for people listening so they know. And of course, Roger Rabbit. And for years, he was trying to get his own animated feature going. And it eventually did get released, not in the form he intended. But I think he would have benefited greatly from going the same route as yourself, Phil.
Yeah, yeah. He ended up getting hosed by somebody right at the end, like Disney, I think it was. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure who it was, but he ended up having to deliver the film, and it had to be released, and it wasn't what he wanted, which was a real shame for him. But Kickstarter is I mean, back in the day, it was a new thing. Now it seems.
Well, yeah, and I hit it right. Someone called me up and just said, "You got to do this," and somebody made $10 million, so it was like ka-ching. And so we started the first one and made a lot, $120,000, which is really helpful. And then the next one was $60,000, and the next one was almost $60,000. I was going to have to put my own money into it to get over the hurdle, but we did it, and it just became too complicated. It was just too many hoops to jump through, and then the funding kind of began to diminish, and the only way that you could get interest was if you made swag and stuff and you sent it out. We'd never done anything like that, but it's really expensive to send stuff to Japan. So we stopped doing that. And I have a friend, Dave Barry, who worked at ILM, the optical department. And his grandfather was the guy that invented the yellow pages when they invented telephones. And so he's sitting on his grandfather's fortune, and he donated a lot of money for me that allowed me to finish it.
Wow. Wow, it's still a modestly budgeted film compared to animated features we'd recognize today.
You
So
know, I never pay any attention to money at all. You know, it's just like that's a responsibility I don't need. And it's really a hindrance, you know, if you have a producer looking over you and it's like, "Ning, ning, 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 ning." And, it was uphill, because a lot of people, including my wife, was like, didn't like it. Yeah, Dennis just really enjoyed the film, but he said, and he saw it in earlier iterations. He said, well, that's interesting. And then he saw it this last time when we were done with it. And he goes like, it's just so amazing once you get it color time and with sound and music and all that, it just shines. And he was working at ILM a lot. And so he was never a part of that whole post-production deal. I mean, even though he was like way into post-production, he was not involved with sound or music or color timing. Yeah, he would be involved with color timing for his shots, but not the whole thing. And so he was, that was good for me to hear. And I think that was why a lot of people, when it was loose and rough edges, had trouble getting into it.
it's always
But
difficult.
I had to show it to get some kind of feedback, and I got very little. But the feedback I got, I paid attention to and changed things.
When I've had people sitting on my rushes in the past, particularly if they haven't been synced up, back in the day when you had to sync up rushes, people would be muttering, "Where's the sound? Where's the sound?" And it's like, you don't want those people in watching rushes and dailies, because it's very off-putting when people are kind of putting down your rushes. I'll just finish with this last kind of question / observation, Phil. I mean, the film Mad God looks at industrial decay and corruption, and it almost feels as if it's kind of pandemic ready. So it's come out at a real timely moment. And of course, we bring to a film, we take from a film what we bring to a film. It reflects back what we want to see. But I mean, it's very timely. And what did you think about that as you were finishing and you knew you were releasing at the end of this crisis?
Everything comes back around again. And that was something that I learned from Verhoeven, is like, there's going to be another war. And then there was. After Starship Troopers, there was the Iraq invasion. And so it was just, and what was amusing about that was, they did all this fanfare and with these logos and everything. And that's what, that war was. You'd come on, you'd think you were watching a football game. So.
Absolutely. Well, I do hope things are cyclical and we don't have to wait another 30 years to see another great animated feature film.
No. The next one I'm going to do is very different. It's much more character driven. Well, I'm going to be looking for money to do it, and it's going to take a lot of money, and I want to do it with a crew, and I want to get it done in like 2 or 2.5 years. So depending upon what the walk away vibe is, if I can interest any people to give me money to do it, then I will.
Well, here's hoping, and I hope we can catch up again very soon to talk about that. Phil Tippett, thank you very much.
It's going to be a lot more fun and nothing like Mad God. It'll be, my idea was to do something that was maybe a little bit more like a Warner Brothers color cartoon from the 40s. Just something that kind of had that level of, fun and amusement and hysteria and, coyotes being pushed off a cliff. So there's a lot of that. Those guys, I knew Tex Avery. I worked with him for years at Cascade Studio, where I met Dennis and Ken Ralston and all these guys. And I'd hang out with Tex and smoke cigarettes by the stages. And I was young, and I asked him, I was always asking people older than me that knew stuff. I was constantly asking questions, and I never knew how to read a dummy sheet. And asked Tex if he'd do it. And he goes, yeah, sure. And so he gets it out and he draws like poses for Bugs Bunny. And he does mouth valves. Hey, what's up, Doc? And he goes like 16 frames, 8 frames, 2 frames, 5 frames. And that was it. And it was like, God, that's okay. Thanks, Tex. Could you sign it for me? He goes, sure. To my good friend, Phil, Tex Avery. And I still have that framed, you know.
Wow. Well, that's whetting the appetite now for the next film. Well, good luck with that. And we hope to see you in about a couple of years. Phil Tippett, thank you very much.
My pleasure.